Hello, and welcome to this quick presentation on the Professional Advantage Making Tax Digital module for Infor SunSystems. The Making Tax Digital module is based on an Australian solution that has been available in the Australian market since the year 2000 and allows for automatic upload of tax returns directly to the Australian Tax Office. This solution is called BAS Interface. I'm going to run through the BAS Interface solution and explain to you how this will be converted to meet requirements of MTD and the HMRC requirements within the UK market. The system will allow for the automatic upload of VAT returns and other submissions in due course from the Infor SunSystems ledger and into the HMRC API. It will avoid the need for rekeying data. It will be fully auditable and remove costly errors. It will also meet the compliance requirements for HMRC in terms of software. The system, like all Professional Advantage solutions, will work with all versions of SunSystems, version 4 through to 6, and it will allow for all the requirements to be met in terms of extracting data directly from the ledger with no manual intervention and passing this into the required fields and forms for the upload to the HMRC. The system will also allow for multiple business units to be covered, multiple returns and multiple entities, and the system will also give you the ability to post journals back into the Sun system for VAT credit account information where needed. It will allow for the storage of non-VAT related information in relation to your company that also needs to be passed through as part of the electronic return. Of course, security and compliance to the HMRC interface will be there, and it will automatically log you in and pass all the security required details through to the HMRC as part of the upload. I'm now going to jump into the software and show you an overview of the BAS interface with a bearing towards how this will be dealt with in relation to MTD and how it will work for the HMRC requirements. So here we have the interface for the Australian version of the solution called BAS Interface. Please bear in mind as we look at this, a lot of these fields will be related to the ATO requirements and the Australian requirements. However, the principles and the way it works will be absolutely similar in the way it works for the HMRC once the conversion to MTD has been completed. Within the system, you'll see that we have a couple of tabs: Inquiry, Process, Reports, and Maintenance. Maintenance is where we set up the system. In this field I'm in at the moment, Cells, what you're able to view is a description of a list of cells that will be required for a VAT return in the Australian environment. So on an Australian tax return, there are many different cells, and each of these has a specific name, has a specific indicator, and a type. So looking across to the right here, we can see GST on sales instalment. This is a mathematical type cell, meaning that data is added into other cells within the form, and the system then calculates mathematically the values that should be in that particular cell. Going down here, we have a V cell. This cell will be one where we want to extract data directly from the ledger into that in the VAT return form, or GST form in this case. So with this type of cell, we could provide a number of selections that would extract the ledger data, work out the correct amounts based on your criteria, and push it into that cell. We also have external data cells. This is where you may need to put in some adjustments or some information that are not held easily within the ledger, and therefore the system needs to be able to cater for that external information. Typically, this could be something related to, say, partially recoverable tax or some such. So, looking down this list, you'll see there are lots of cells. And within the Australian environment, we have a number of different submission types that we can actually deal with within the BAS interface. Within the UK MTD version, the initial requirement is to meet the VAT 100 return. So we are probably looking at those 9 standard cells here that you would need within that return. However, down the road, we may also decide to include other submissions, things such as the EEC sales list, and therefore we may increase the number of cells. But all of these will be maintained within the system and meet the HMRC requirements. So you will not have to set any of this up. This is managed within the system itself. If we go and have a look at periods, period information obviously is very important within your tax environment. So what we can do within BAS interface and in future within MTD will be to define a period to month setup for each business unit. So the system can cater for multiple business units, multiple entities, and we can set up for each of these a year. And for each of those years, we can say that a certain month relates to certain periods within the SunSystems environment. This means that when we process an inquiry or process a return, we can actually choose based on the calendar month, and we can deal with quarters and annual returns as well. So the system works for monthly, annual, and quarterly. Each of these periods is up to you and can be defined, and we can copy them from the previous year. A very important area of the system is your selections. So where we're going to populate data from SunSystems into a particular cell within the return, we would like to set a group of criteria that will extract that information. So within here, we can set up many different sets of criteria and give them a name. So for each cell, you may want to give it a name indicating the same name as the cell, for example. We can choose which business unit within SunSystems that's going to be coming from and which ledger that information will be coming from. We then decide how the data will be extracted based on a range of accounts live from within SunSystems. That can also be a non-contiguous cherry-picked type range. We can base it on journal types. So that may be relevant to tax or the type of transaction you wish to bring into a cell. And of course, using account or A code dimensions, and most importantly, your transaction dimensions or T codes. So if you need to pick up particular information related to a department or a cost center or an entity, that can be done. Probably really important would be the tax analysis code, because certainly in extracting data to put into a VAT return, you are going to need to be able to select transactions based on the tax analysis type. So what type of tax is it that you're bringing into that particular cell, etc. So we can define these selections and we can save them. So they're sitting there as a set of selections that we can then apply to the form where needed. So part of the setup obviously would be to work out where you wish to get that data from, break them down and set up these selection criteria. Once we've done that, we can go into our profile. This is the most important part of the system, and it's where we set up the submission type. So you can see here that we have the ability to set up multiple submission types. So I have one called VAT, Demo Business Unit. I have another one called VAT2. Potentially one of these could be for a monthly return. Another one could be for an annual return or a quarterly return, because you can lodge these as often as you like, and that will meet the HMRC requirements for this. So if we have a look at our VAT return, I've given it a name. It's entirely up to you what you call it. We've got a company number. ABN is Australian company number. This obviously will be all localized. So in MTD going forward in the UK, this will all be related to the UK company requirements. We can then choose if we're looking at a monthly, a quarterly, or an annual return. So when we run this profile, what is it? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly, etc.? And then below this, we have our BAS type. Now, this is a very Australian term, BAS type. In the UK, this would just be the submission type. So you can see that we actually cater for two in the Australian market. One is the BAS-G, one is the BAS-Y. Initially, for MTD in the UK, when this is converted, you'll probably see this will be a VAT 100 type return, a very standard one, and there'll be one there. But this gives us plenty of scope within the solution, as per the current functionality, to extend this and add extra return types. So EC sales list is something that's come up a few times in people's interest. But there could be others down the road as HMRC increases their sort of understanding of what they're allowing for digital submission. We will be able to cope with those and add them in due course. So I'm just looking at a BAS-G, a monthly return currently. And you can see here that we've got cell values. So there are certain cells that appear on a BAS-G. Obviously, there are many different cells that we cater for here. And the Australia returns tend to be somewhat more complex than the UK VAT returns, so that's why there are so many cells. However, you can decide which cells are relevant to you, turn them on or off. So I've actually activated some of these cells for a BAS-G, and you can see that these are the cells that are coming through here. So in effect, what I'm doing is saying, on the standard form, these are the cells that I wish to populate, and choosing to allow these to be made available here to add selections to. Now, on a VAT return, typically we've got 9 boxes. So we will probably end up with our standard 9 boxes, 9 cells in here. Some of them will be mathematical. Some of them will be populated from the system. Some may be external. So, you know, we will cater for those different cell types within here. So once I've got my cells, all I need to do then is decide where does the data come from. So for this one, we look at that cell. It's total sales. What I'll be wanting to do is extract from the ledger all information related to total sales. So I can choose the selection that I've already set up that's called total sales and will extract that information from my ledger for me. So where I've already defined those criteria, looking at the right accounts, looking at the right underlying data. So if I leave it like that, what will happen, oops, I didn't mean to sort like that. If I leave that like that, what it will do is when I process this for an inquiry or for a submission, it will bring that data into that cell for me. Very simple, very easy. Same thing goes for these other cells. Go down, decide what the cells are that I'm using, and then put the right selection in. Most interestingly, however, there are some here where you have the option for external data, and this is quite important. So maybe you need to bring data from the ledger, but you perhaps need to also add some extra values in, some adjustments that you've calculated or worked out in the background, something along those lines. And the system will account for those adjustments by allowing you to add selections for external data. So obviously, under the Making Tax Digital requirement from the HMRC, the aim is to reduce or remove manual intervention of data that may be coming directly from the ledger and through the electronic interface to the HMRC. However, there are some areas where this is still going to be needed in some ways. You quite often have an adjustment for previous tax years, things like this, or potentially you may have situations such as partially recoverable tax where you need to run some calculations on the values for the year and then decide what percentage you're going to proportion back against tax to be submitted, etc. So there are a number of different options there. And in order to cater for this, the system allows you to define external data values over here. So this external data value allows you, in effect, to set up multiple different sets of external data, and we can define for a month or indeed for a quarter in a particular year the values that you wish to be populated for this particular external value. So if you know that you have an adjustment that needs to be put into the January-March quarter, for example, you can put that in here for a particular year, and then when you choose this external data value in your profile, it will bring this data into the form for you. So it's a very simple process, and we can set these up as often as you like. The great thing about it is, by putting them in here, we're removing the spreadsheet requirement where you're entirely separate from the ledger. You're actually keeping these data elements within the SunSystems database and contained within your digital environment, and bringing those together as part of the submission automatically and electronically. So it gives you the audit trail, it gives you the single source of truth in terms of where that's held and the history, which meets the HMRC requirement and allows you to, in effect, perform tax digital, but still have this manual adjustment type capability. So if we go back to our profile here, you can see that I can add external data as opposed to using a selection from Sun. And when I process this for a period or for a month or a quarter, that value will be populated into the cell. What we can also do is have just external data, could be a particular requirement, but we could work on percentage basis. So this RITC here, this is an Australian term. However, this could be percentage tax or something along those lines in the UK HMRC requirement. And we can populate an actual percentage here, which would then be a percentage of the value coming from the Sun cell. So once you've calculated externally your partially recoverable, you could put that value in here and it would be applied to the form. So very simple, very flexible, allowing you to deal with both Sun data and external data. What we can do is also provide a posting profile. In some cases, you may wish to push data back into the ledger based on tax credit account or something along those lines when you process the return. As to how the HMRC is going to handle this in terms of their API, that is still to be decided, but we are able to account for that sort of requirement and, of course, define where we start in the ledger in terms of start periods, journal numbers for each particular profile. So if we have built our profile, what we want to do, we want to actually allow you to, one, inquire on this, and two, submit the return. So if we go to the Inquiry tab, what this allows us to do is at any point inquire on our current tax position based on the profile we define. So I can go in, choose my profile, maybe it's the annual, maybe it's the monthly, etc. I then have a look at which year I wish to process and which tax month. So in effect, this will then pick the data from Sun based on the period that we've defined as being that calendar month. So I process 2018 March. We can have a report. The system does come with a comprehensive set of reports where required, and then we can decide which cells we want to have an inquiry on. I'm going to do the whole thing here. When I run it, what it will do is extract the data and show you the cells and the values that will be populated into it. So if this was our VAT 100 return profile, we will be seeing all of the relevant cells and the current tax position based on the ledger data and the external data and cells that I've added. Very simple, very easy to do. And we can then just process a different month at any time, just go and rerun it. So it gives us a very easy way of just continually understanding our tax and making any adjustments that we may need as we go along. So that's our reporting from an inquiry point of view, and we can preview that, bring it into a report if we wanted to, print it out. The other type of reports we have are for comparing multiple profiles against multiple periods, things like this. So this is quite good for seeing where my tax was last year, where I am now, that sort of thing. So we've got compare one profile across 2 periods, compare 2 profiles across a period, compare 1 profile across multiple periods, and compare 2 profiles across multiple periods. So sort of various different ways of doing this. However, just to show you one here, I'm going to choose my VAT profile that I've set up. Maybe compare year 2018, in 2018, January to February. And I could decide a cell range if I wanted to, but I won't. When I run the report, this then gives me this breakdown. So you can see here that it's comparing the values that will go into each cell based on that information. Pretty simple. These reports can be exported to Excel or PDF. So the only other area in the inquiry that's really useful is we've got our total values here, but what actually underlies that? Very easy to do. And this is one of the nice benefits about using the MTD module and indeed BAS interface in its current form. If we have a look at cell G1, total cells, if I double click, it will drill me down and give you a typical Professional Advantage grid where I can see all of the information that's being populated from the ledger, see the information and manipulate it as well. So I could say, let's have a balance by account, let's do it by journal number, move my columns around, sort and filter all the custom information. So this is a typical Sun grid in PA world, and we can export that to Excel. Already there, we're trying to remove this Excel requirement using MTD. However, you can obviously take it out if you want to for any particular cell information. So very, very easy to use, gives you that extra validity and understanding about what you're including. So once you're happy with your tax, at any stage, we can go and process it. So to process it, we choose our profile, so VAT 100, maybe it's annual, maybe it's monthly, choose our year, choose our period. All these things we know are already defined, have a report, and there will be various options here that will be related to dealing with the HMRC. This is related to, at the moment, no requirement for the ATO, but there will be, obviously, as part of their API, various bits of extra information in relation to the company, security, output files, things like this that will be needed there. And as part of our conversion to MTD, that's what we will push into this area. So when you're ready, you would run the report. That would then process your return, create the detail, populate all the fields, and then push that through the HMRC interface digitally using all the security and the correct submission information. You may also potentially have extra things such as supplementary information, which we will be allowing you to capture within the system, and any company information. So we will be meeting those HMRC requirements as part of the release that is planned for October. So that pretty much is an overview of the BAS interface, the Australian version of the proposed UK MTD system. Obviously, if anyone is interested in this, then please do contact us or contact your SunSystems account manager. We are taking early interest orders for MTD at the moment, and people who get in early at this stage will be getting a significant discount on the future price of the module. So if you're interested, please do contact us. Have a look at our website, have a look at the MTD under products, and you'll see all the information there and an order form. And hopefully I look forward to seeing you using MTD come April 2019. So thank you very much for your time today.